All right, welcome to our computer science unit on object-oriented programming, or OOP. This is our third lesson, and today's lesson we're looking at applications of classes. The applications are just there's so many of them, but I'm trying to stick with good, simple examples that we can use to immediately start to understand and appreciate the benefits of object-oriented programming. So the first lesson, we started making just basic information about, students and objects and things like that. In the second lesson, we looked at not just characteristics that we called variables, but we also looked at something called methods. We were making in that unit we made points and segments and things like that. We were able to write methods that could do work for us to allow us to get area and perimeter and things like that. Well, we're going to look now at a time class, and this could be something used in the implementation of an online stopwatch or some sort of data recording software, something like that. But we're going to look at just a time class and see some of the subtleties that can result in how object-oriented programming might help. So I'm going to start with a class diagram. And I'm making a class called time. So that'll be the name of our class. And I want us to have three variables to describe the time. That's the number of hours, the minutes, and the seconds. We're going to make a double under method called str. That's going to make it to where when we print our time, it will not print out the memory location. You'll remember it's a big pile of garbage, but actually print out a nice representation of the time. We're going to start with a group of three methods. I've kind of grouped them here based on when we're going to do them. We're going to do add second, add minute, and add hour. So let's work with just that right now. So we're going to make a new module here. And let's save it as the time module here. And I'm a little concerned about that, actually, because there is a time module in Python, but that's okay. As long as we're not in the different folder, it'll be fine. So, our time module, we're going to start with class time. So we have lowercase time.time is where you would find this class. All right. So to make our variables, which you recall were hours, minutes, and seconds, we need to have a constructor. But I do want to show you something a little bit unusual about classes as organization structures. If I run this module right now, believe it or not, pass just means ignore. I actually have a complete class. I can actually call an initializer on time. It just doesn't do anything. But you'll see it is a time object, right? You might be wondering, well, what kind of methods are associated with it? And if you put the period, you don't really get anything. But I can actually make something just like that. And you'll see now I have H as an option, and it's 5. And then, so that's a really neat thing about classes is that we're not stuck with the variables they have. We can actually add more information to them, which I think is really interesting. All right, but we don't want that. We want to make a nice, good class. So we're going to say def underscore underscore. 2 underscores or it won't work. Init underscore underscore. Close parentheses, self. And I'm going to say 8 hours, minutes, seconds. Now I'm going to make those permanently assigned to my time like this. And there we go. All right, we're iterating through this process of developing our class. So let's make sure we check it as we go. So I'll do 3, 25, and 0 seconds. So you see we have all that information stored. But one of the things that's irritating is right now the object that we have, what does that main mean? Well, it means that we are in, we've seen if name equals main, that we are in the main program thread here, the main module. And it's just telling us this number's value. And so that's not a very useful thing right now for our class. So that's the first thing I want to do. Now, we could say def like describe self, but we learned that there's a special double under method, a special dunder method called str. So anytime you have a double under method, it means it's going to replace something that Python automatically does for you. So we're going to say return. We want to return a description of this. So, and it has to be a string. So I'm going to say str to string self.hours. I'm going to say string self.minutes. And then I'll say string self.seconds. But in between those things, I think I forgot something. Don't you think we should have little quotes like that? All right. So in between hours, minutes, and seconds, we're going to put the little colons. And of course, I forgot a plus sign. I'll try that again. All right, there we go. So I'll just call it T1 again. Time, I'm going to do 3, 25, and let's do 18 seconds. There's my object. But when I print it, it makes a nice, pretty, looks like a clock, right? But I used 3, 25, and 18. Can you think of some values I could use that would have made this not print like a clock? What if I make a second time like this? I'll do 4 p.m., 4 minutes, and 5 seconds. Is that how clocks are supposed to look? No. Yeah. I don't know if we need one in front of the hours. I guess when I show you how to do it, I'll let you make that decision, right? But the minutes and seconds have definitely got to have a 0 in front of it. And if you Google how to zero pad, that's what it's called in Python, you'll find that there are just tons of ways to do it and lots of arguments about what's the best way. I'm going to use the zfill method. So this is a string here, okay? But I'm going to go ahead and just do this here. I'm going to say H equals, I'm going to get rid of this actually, because I feel like my code's getting too long and hard to read. So I'm going to say str self.hours. Okay, so H is my hours as a string. M is my hours, my minutes as a string. and then S is my seconds as a string. So I'm just creating some short-lived local variables here, just some temporary variables, H, M, and S, and they're already strings. And one of the string methods is called zfill. And pardon me if I get this wrong, but I believe it's all lowercase, one word. And then I want to say it's 2. So 2 meaning I'm going to have up to 2 zeros. Then I'll put my colons. And we could have just put this right here. We could have said, like, after you say string, you can call a dot operation. But zfill 2. And then I'll do seconds. And I think that's right. I don't, every time I want to zero pat something, I have to look it up again. Because it's not a function I use very often. But I think that's right. I'm just going to print it, see what I think. Oh, yeah, that's good. So if you want to leave off this first zfill, you can. That would be fine as well. I think I will, actually. I think I'll just zfill my minutes and seconds. So remember, zfill, though, I had to convert it to a string first. That's not an integer method. There is a way to do it on ints, but that's different. Okay, so hopefully that made sense. We've now got a nice and pretty string method. One down, a whole bunch to go. All right, so our next method we're going to do is add seconds. Okay? And I'll just use S for my amount of seconds that I'm adding. So I'm going to add S seconds to this, okay? Well, I don't know. It's kind of a bad variable. I'll call it secs. Okay. Now, so we just need to take our self.seconds, right? And plus equals to increase it by seconds. Secs. Right there. There we go. All right. So now when we make a time variable, I'll do 5:25 and 13 seconds. Now we have a way to directly access it, okay? Like I said, we talked about the other asset, but as we go through this, you're going to understand why not. But it is typically not preferred to directly change your instance variables, okay? But Python will let you do it. Guido von Rossum, the creator of Python, when asked why he doesn't do anything to prevent you directly accessing variables, he said, well, we're all adults here. Meaning that, like, it's up to you whether or not you want to do it. Right? So, yeah, I can just add equals 1. So you might be wondering, well, why did I even write this method if all I have to do is say t1.seconds plus equals 1? Well, I can say t1.addSeconds now as well, and I can add, like, 1 second, and I really don't have any problem with looking at variables. It's changing them directly that's always a little bit fishy. But you see, it works just the same, doesn't it? Because this just takes my seconds variable and adds 1, and then this just takes the second variable assigned to self and adds the seconds I pass to it. So I put a 1 here. The 1 goes into the seconds and increases seconds by it, right? So, same thing. I could do t1.seconds, plus equals, I don't know, 50, right? And that would be the same thing as doing add seconds, and so that gives me t1.seconds of 65. Whoops. That's not right, is it? We shouldn't have a time. I should not have, if I print t1, I'm way down here at the bottom of my screen. It's hard to see, I know. But I've got a time now that doesn't make sense. And this is just, I know it's kind of a cheesy example, but you can see the problems that can happen when you're directly changing variables. And you add into that networking, you add into that different people accessing the same data from over the World Wide Web from two different computers at the same time, you got a world of hurt. If you're, you could have people having two different states of what they think is the same thing, all sorts of problems. So we need to have more control than just letting someone just change it, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to fix this add seconds by adding some more code to this. And I can't do that with just the plus equals, right? But when I call the add seconds, I can be a little bit more careful, right? So when we add seconds, let's think about how that's going to work. First of all, it could just take us over the seconds, right? And we could just add it to it and then figure out how many minutes we need to take away. So I'm going to say, actually, you know what? Let me do a little bit on the interactive shell so you can see what I'm talking about. So let's say I have S for my seconds, and right now it's 55. Or I just said 5, whatever. And I add to that like 100. How can I figure out how many seconds I should really have and what should happen to my minutes? Well, this is why Python has the divide operator. The divide operator is different than the single divide operator. If I say S divided by 60, it gives me 1.75. But if I say S divide 60, it gives me exactly 1. So, for example, if I had, let me keep this up high, hold on. Let me just share a little bit more about why this is so helpful. If I have 50 divide 60, right? That's 50 seconds. How many times does 60 seconds go into it? 0 times. That means there's 0 additional minutes. If I have like 200 divide 60, it tells me I need 3 additional minutes. So all that's left is we need to figure out how to get the seconds. That's the mod operator. So let me talk a little bit about the mod operator. All right, so the mod operator returns the remainder after dividing. So let's say I have 105, and I'm going to divide it by 60. So 60 goes into 100, one time? So this is called the quotient, and that's what the divide operator gives us. That's the divide. Now, after doing that, I need to multiply. 1 times 60 is 60. You bring down and you subtract, right? Let's see, 5 minus 0 is 5, and then I need to, borrow here? Make that a 0, make that a 10. I could just do 10 minus 6 is 4, right? But, so 45, 45, that's what we call the remainder, right? This is the remainder. Well, that's what you get when you do what's called the mod operator, okay? So let's just practice a few more together without using big numbers like 60. Let's practice divide, and the mod operator. So let's say I have 8 mod 3. Can you figure out what that would be? That's the remainder when you divide 8 by 3. So try it on your own right now. All right, so 8 divided by 3. 3 goes into 8 2 times. 2 times 3 is 6. And the remainder is 2. So 8 mod 3 is 2. All right, what about 20 divide 6? Well, you just simply say how many times does 6 go into 20? Well, it goes into 3 times, right? And I don't care about the remainder, but what's key is that. That's the answer to divide. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. The difference between divide, also called integer divide, and the modulo operator. Really important stuff in computer science, especially in fields of cryptology, passwords and secrets and encryption and all that stuff. So it's pretty cool stuff. All right. So That's what we're going to do. We're going to take our number of seconds and we're going to divide by 60 and increase our minutes by that amount. Okay? So I'll say extra mins equals self.seconds divide 60. That's going to tell me, I'm going to use a little comment. Remember the pound sign? The little hashtag means comment. It'll be ignored. So that's going to tell me the number of extra minutes that have been added. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to say self.seconds mod equals 60. This is the same thing as saying self.seconds is equal to self.seconds mod 60. So what we're going to do is we're going to set the seconds to the number of seconds that it over a minute. If there's 400 seconds in it, it's going to set seconds to 40 because that's 40 seconds over the nearest minute, which is 360 seconds. But we can do, just like we had the plus equals, we have the mod equals 60. All right, now we can add our extra minutes to the minutes. But in fact, I'm not going to do that because that's wasted effort. Because I'm supposed to write a method, if you recall, called add minute. So why don't we? Oh, I'm calling this add seconds. Oh, I changed my class term. I like add seconds. That's better. Let's call a method called add minutes. So we're going to come back and finish later. So we're going to say, come back and finish me later. There's actually something called there's actually a thing for that, and it's called to do. And most good software development tools will actually tell you everywhere you've commented to do. So you have your to-do list, basically. Isn't that kind of cool? All right. So def add minutes. So let's write our code for how do we handle adding minutes. Well, we take self.minutes, right? And we plus equal mins. Simple enough, most cases, right? If it was 3:45, you add 5 minutes, it's 3:50. The problem is, what do we do if we're adding more than 60 minutes? Or we're adding less than that, but we take it over 60 minutes. We want someone to be able to create a time that's even at 000 and then add in seconds and have it convert it for them. So we really want to make this as general as possible. So I'm going to take this and call this extra hours. My extra hours, there's 60 minutes in an hour, so I'll say divide 60 again. That's the number of extra hours. Then I'll take self.minutes and I will mod equal it by 60. And then I'm not just going to add this to the hours because that would be wasted time because I'm about to write a method that handles that. Right? All right. We're going to now write a method that adds hours. So I think you know how this is going to go. We can say self.hours plus equals hours. Not equals hours, right? Maybe it'd be better to give this a different variable name like HRS or whatever you want to do. I don't know. But you can use hours if you want. It doesn't matter because this is self.hours, which is different than just hours. But it's key. I want you to increase. Don't set it to hours. Increase it by hours. All right. Now, these are extra days, right? And how many days are there? How many hours are in a day? 24. So I'm going to do divide 24. Okay. And then I'm going to say self.hours mod equals 24. We are doing a military clock here, if you haven't caught on to that. We could make it a non-military clock, right? But that requires even more coding, right? And it'd be a good project to do, don't get me wrong. You know, I just don't want to. And it's probably better to write just to compute everything in military hours, to tell you the truth. And then if someone really wants it non-military, convert it then. But for us, it just makes sense to do it this way. So now what should I do with extra days? Well, the truth of the matter is we could erase this line of code because we're not keeping track of the days. So I'm just going to get rid of it. I just put it there to show you the pattern. So now let's go back to our to-do. We have a way to handle hours. So after we compute the excess hours, let's go ahead and call that. But how do I call a different method? So we need to see how these things work. So let me show you real quick. Let me run my module. And I'll say T1 is equal to time 3:45 and 15 seconds. If I want to add time, like add seconds, I do it like that. I say the name of the object, which is T1, dot, add seconds. And you can see that works. If I have a T2, maybe that's 12, 5, 50, and 10. I'd say T2 add seconds. This is not going to change. This is not going to change T1. It will only change T2. But how would I call something like the add seconds? Or in this case, I'm going to add hours. I want to say T2 add hours 1, right? How would I call the add hours with these extra hours when I'm not down here, I'm up here? Well, the pattern is the same. You say the name of the object dot the method you want to call. Well, when you're inside a class, the name of the object is self. Because self means this particular time. T2 is self. T1 is self. So I say self dot add hours, extra hours. And I hope that makes sense. And here, I got my extra minutes. I'm going to say self dot add minutes. And I send it the extra minutes. Let's try it. T1 equals time 3:59 and 59 seconds. I'm going to do T1 dot add seconds. I'm going to add 1 second. The time now is 4 o'clock. Huh? Pretty cool, right? Okay, the next method that I want you to do is the runoff seconds. And the idea here is that the runoff seconds is actually going to, and this would be better if we were perhaps, doing something with this in a graphical application, which we're not right now. It's just text. But we can kind of simulate that. I want you to simulate running off seconds. So we're going to say def runoff. And here's what's going to happen. I want you to code this. I want you to try and do this yourself. I want when the runoff method is called with the number of seconds, that it prints the time that it is 1 second after what it is right now and keeps printing it till it reaches that time. So if they call the time, if the time is 4 o'clock and they say run off 15 seconds, you're going to see 4 o'clock 1, 4 second, 4 o'clock 2, all the way up to 15. If they call it with 0 seconds, then you'll simply print out the time that it is right now. So make sure that you run off all the seconds and then print the time. So try and write this method on your own. If you're at home, pause the video, and it's going to take probably some loops, some prints, and some ifs maybe. So give it a try. Okay, so I really hope you took your time to think about how you would do that. So what we want to do is we want to print to the console every second from now until the number of seconds have run off. So if, for example, if they say run off 5, then I'm going to print 5 seconds off. So that means for I in range is a great loop for us to use. And we're going to say, first we're going to add a second, and then we'll print out the time. Now, I could try and say, okay, self.seconds plus equals 1. And then I have to think, well, what if I went over 60 seconds? And I could do all that stuff that I did before. But that's not good coding. I've already handled how to add seconds. Let's use this method. And just like before, when we called another method that we wrote in this class, we say self, then dot the method name. We're going to do the same thing here. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to say self dot add seconds. And how many seconds I'm adding? 1 at a time. And then I'm going to print. What am I going to print? Self. Let's try it. All right, so there's my time. T1.runoff, 40 seconds. Oh, boy. I was bad. I forgot to put the word self there. Sorry, I Java'd. Meaning that in Java, you don't have to put the word self there. Yeah, I'm bad about that. And there it goes. You may have been surprised by this print self, but that's just using yourself as a way to... Self is the object itself, so that's what I wanted to print. Because it's in a print statement, it automatically actually does that. Calls the double unders str. All right, so that was kind of fun. Let's go to add time. So our next method, add time, is going to take self and another time object, which I'll call like T2. Okay? So T2 is the other time. And let me talk about how this is supposed to work. So let's say that I have a time of 3:45 and 10 seconds. If I call add time 0, 0, and 5, then the answer is pretty obvious. It's 3:45 and 15 seconds, right? But what if I'm going to add something like 4, 20, and I don't know, 55. Well, the 10 and 55 is actually going to become a 5 and carry the 1, right? And then this is going to become 66 now, so it'll be a 06 carry the hour. So it needs to be something like that. So we can handle all that logic, or again, we can do it smart. We can use the things that we already have written. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to call my methods to add seconds, minutes, and hours to myself. Self.seconds. Oh, that's not right. Self.add seconds. And this is going to seem weird because I think this is the first time we've done this, but we're going to do it a lot. We're going to be adding a different times seconds. So I have to say t2.seconds. So we're going to take the seconds off of this time, which I access by saying t2.seconds, and add it to my seconds. Okay? I take my self's seconds and I add t2 seconds. Self.add hours, t2.hours. Oh, that should be minutes. Let's do minutes. I guess it doesn't matter, actually, the order that I do this. And then self.add hours. And there we go. Want to try it? Let's do our example. 3, 45, and 10. 3, 45, and 10 seconds. T2. How much did we add to that one? We did, what did we do? 8? No, 4, 20, and 55 seconds. All right. And we're going to add them. T1 dot add time T2. We get 8:06:05. All right, so that we're just running through these things. We've done add time. We have subtract time, but that's actually kind of a tricky one. And we don't have. We would probably want to do decrease seconds, decrease minutes, decrease hours, but before we did that. But I'm going to change add time later. So let's just wait and come back to those, and let's go on to these relational things. Okay, that allows us to compare things. So first of all, though, let's talk about the need for it. So I just did a little test of my T1 and T2, right? So I'm going to make, I'm going to take T2 and say add time 3, 45, 10. So I'm actually adding, I'm creating an anonymous object inside of this, and that should get me back to the same time I was before. So yeah, they are identical because first I added this time to this time. Now I'm adding this time to this time. I get the same time, right? So do you remember in Python how you ask if two things are equal? For example, like 8 equals 4 plus 6, or that is false, right? 8 equals 2 plus 6 is true. That's how we do. That's how we compare things with two equal signs. One equal sign is what you use to assign, like when I assign time to T1. But, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to say T1 equals T2, and logically this should be true, right? But it's false. Why? Well, are they the same time object? Wow, that's cool. They look really, really similar. But they're not. Look, they have a different second to last digit in their location. They're not the same object. They're not equal. But I would like them to say that they're equal when that happens. So I'm going to write a method called equals. Okay? And again, I'm going to call it T2 for the other time. So this is going to tell me whether or not two times are equals. So if they're equal, then I need to have self dot hours needs to equal T2 dot hours. And self dot minutes needs to equal T2 dot minutes. And self dot seconds needs to equal T2 dot seconds. So let me just make that on different lines for a second so you can see. So I have all three of them here. My hours, because I'm comparing myself. We're always thinking of it when you code methods as how does this object compare to this other. Myself compared to T2. Self.hours equals T2.hours. Self.minutes equals T2 minutes. If all of those things are true, then we should have, I'll put them all back on one line now, then we should have a true statement. So let's run it. So I'm going to create a couple of different times here. I'll say T1 equals time, and the time will be 2, 15, and 30 seconds. T2 will be time, 2, 15, and 30 seconds. T1 is that object. T2 is that object. Well, very similar, but not the same. And keep in mind, you probably have different numbers than me, I'm betting, right? So we can see they are different. Let's do T1 equals T2. False. But what about T1 dot equals T2? That's true. So now we have a method for knowing whether something is equal. But I want to show you something that's super cool that Python allows us to do. I was calling this equals times, but I just call it equals. You can actually change the way operators work. So I can actually change this to EQ. And look at it. It's that double under. That means we don't directly call it. It's called for us. Now that I call it double under EQ, I could say T2 equals time 5, 16, 37. Let's see if there's any multiples there. T1 equals time 5, 16, 37. T1 equals T2 is now true. We have changed the way this equals works. We can even do the same thing for the add operators. We could say def underscore underscore add. Now, this is a little bit different, though, than what we did before. We did an add time here, but that changed our current time. What we have to do to override add is we have to get a brand new time. So watch as I do that. I'm going to say time t equals time self dot hours self dot minutes self dot seconds, and what I'm going to do is say t dot add time T2, and then I'll just return T, because you have to actually return a brand new time in order to add. Oh, why did I say time? I Java'd again. Dang it. Sorry. All right. So T1 equals time 3, 30, and 30 seconds. T2 equals time 1, 15, and 40 seconds. T1 plus T2 returns a time object. But I can print it. 4, 46, and 10 seconds. We've now made the plus operator be supported in our time class, which I just think that's super cool that Python allows us to control the plus operator. All right, so here's what I'm going to want you to do. I want you to write some additional methods for me. I want you to write less than, greater than, less than or equal to, which I call less than EQ, greater than or equal to, for different times. As a bonus, look up on the internet what the double under methods are so you can actually use the less than and greater than operators. So currently, if I say T1 less than T2, it says simply not supported. It doesn't tell me false or true. It just says it's not supported. But you can add support to see if one time comes before another time or one time comes after. So I want you to try and do that. Support the less than or equal to as well. You can easily find them. Just Google overloading Python operators. Overloading Python operators. But you don't have to. But you do need to write those methods. When you're done with that, you can turn this assignment. Let's not worry about subtract time right now. I'll leave that as a bonus for you to think about. If you can try it, and you can even try and do the underscore sub underscore to do the subtract operation. But other than that, I think that we're going to call that a lesson. So see you next time.